Under the threat of force, protests were banned during today's controversial special election as voters lined up to cast their ballots. But just hours after polls opened, the streets erupted in violence once again, with sections of Caracas engulfed in smoke and tear gas. Opposition leaders say at least 14 people were killed just today, bringing the death toll to more than 120 in 4 months of protests.
They want to break us down, but when they do that, they give us more strength.
With today's vote, Socialist President Nicolás Maduro wants to create a political assembly with vast power to rewrite the Constitution and potentially dismantle the democratically elected legislature. Polls show most Venezuelans are against the creation of a new assembly. And all of the candidates today are Maduro supporters, including his wife and son. The opposition is largely boycotting the election, calling it illegitimate. Supporters say this is a vote for peace.
I'm voting because we're trying to support what our main leader taught us, the road to the peace.
On national television this morning, President Maduro tried to cast his vote. When a poll worker scanned his ID, the screen read, "This person does not exist," or the ID was annulled. After that mishap, President Maduro's vote was recognized. The U.S. and other countries around the world have condemned today's election.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.
Happened at a Kurdish community centre. I just want to take you to those live shots that we have, where you can see some of the protests that are taking place, people gathering where a 69-year-old man was arrested after the shooting that happened in Paris. Officials say that he was already known to the authorities, and it's reported that he tried to attack a migrant centre last year. Well, as you're currently looking at, you can see protesters taking to the streets near the scene of the attack. The French Interior Minister also visited the scene. He said that demonstrations against the shooting would be allowed to take place. But you can see there crowds gathering outside the scene of that shooting. Well, let's bring in our Europe correspondent, Siobhan Robbins, who's following this story. Siobhan, what can you tell us?
Well, as you can see from the live pictures coming out of Paris at the moment, extremely angry scenes on the streets. They're happening just around the corner. We could hear when the Interior Minister visited in the last hour, much louder chants. That seemed to be when that anger really bubbled over. It's not exactly clear what those demonstrators are currently demanding, but clearly extremely angry following this shooting that happened today. Just to give you some more background on what happened, it's in the 10th district of Paris, so quite a busy central area, multicultural area. And we understand that a gunman targeted a Kurdish cultural centre and shot at least 6 people. We know 3 of those people have died. Now, we understand from prosecutors that the gunman himself was injured. He's got wounds to his face and is currently being treated in hospital. But this was someone who was on the radar of the police. He had been detained before for attacks on a Paris migrant camp with a sabre, we're told by prosecutors, in 2021. Now, it was interesting because when the Interior Minister walked those streets in the last hour, he did say, although he was known to the authorities, he wasn't on the radar of the security services. And also he said that although he was on the police radar, that he wasn't on the radar for politically motivated attacks. So really the investigations are continuing there in Paris. We heard from authority that they're still keeping an open mind about what the motive was, but they are looking at whether this was a racially motivated attack. But very tense scenes in the capital there ahead of Christmas.
You're talking about the tense scenes, and we can certainly see it on our screens right now, something appearing to be burning in the street there. You can hear the sort of shouting, chanting from people who are gathering in Paris to, as you say, Siobhan, really kind of show their anger. It's, as you were talking there, weren't you, about how it's unclear what exactly they are demanding, but it's not the first time, is it, that we've seen this kind of violence in Paris and perhaps dissatisfaction with the authorities as well?
No, if we are honest about it, violence between police and various groups of protests happen extremely frequently in France. I've been in France myself for football events, for example. The police use tear gas quite routinely. They also use pepper spray as well. We've seen tear gas being shot today. But as we say, today we don't know exactly what those people are demanding. They're clearly very, very angry. The Interior Minister making it clear when he visited that those demonstrations would be allowed to continue. So they're not trying to clear people off the streets in that sense. But we can see that the police are very quick to move in with more aggressive crowd control there, that they have been using tear gas and pepper spray. At the moment, though, it doesn't seem to be clearing people from those streets, and it is quite regular that we see these type of fights back and forth between groups of protesters and police in the capital.
You can see the police sort of moving in there with shields, with also their own sort of personal protection as well. That fine balance, of course, between allowing people to show that anger and to protest at the scene of what happened earlier. Siobhan, thank you very much indeed. We'll stay across those pictures in Paris for you.
The incredible scenes unfolding in Brazil's capital Sunday. Thousands of protesters confronting police wielding makeshift weapons, smashing windows, storming Brazil's Congress, presidential palace, and Supreme Court. All of it eerily similar to one of the ugliest chapters in American history, the January 6th attacks. The protesters claiming the October election that saw left-leaning former president Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, or just Lula, barely defeat right-wing incumbent Jair Bolsonaro, was rigged. It's a claim Bolsonaro had been making for months without evidence. Lula promising to punish the demonstrators, calling them fascists, and saying they did something that wasn't ever done in the history of this country. Overnight, Lula arriving at the presidential palace to assess the damage. Federal police were deploying tear gas and flashbangs well into the night. Officials say more than 400 people have already been arrested. Those who follow Brazilian politics say this felt almost inevitable.
Since January 6th, how much concern has there been in Brazil that something like that could happen?
A lot, because Bolsonaro is a major fan of Trump. Trump is his idol.
The protesters have received support from some Trump allies, including former aide Steve Bannon, who posted about it on social media, calling them freedom fighters. Bannon was involved in the president's attempt to overturn the 2020 election and even predicted the chaos one day before the Capitol riots.
All hell is going to break loose tomorrow.
Meanwhile, global leaders quickly condemning the violent behavior in Brazil, with President Biden calling it an assault on democracy and tweeting, "Brazil's democratic institutions have our full support, and the will of the Brazilian people must not be undermined." Bolsonaro, reportedly in Orlando since December, reacting to the riots on social media, tweeting, "Invasions of public buildings are outside the law."
You mentioned, Sam, that he's in Florida. Are there potential consequences for him here?
Right. He is reportedly in Orlando right now, Savannah. We know that Bolsonaro is the subject of several criminal probes at the moment. Now, the fact that he's no longer the sitting president does reduce a good deal of legal protection that he had. But U.S. lawmakers right now, Savannah, are demanding, some of them, that the U.S. not provide refuge to this man. There is an extradition deal that the U.S. has with Brazil. But how it would be applied in this case is not exactly clear. But certainly Brazil would have to request that extradition. Savannah?
All right, a lot of moving parts there, Sam. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for watching. Don't miss the Today Show every weekday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 Pacific on our streaming channel, Today All Day. To watch, head to today.com/allday or click the link right here.